Hello, everyone. Oh, what just happened? Okay. Hello, everyone. I am Christine Gritman, and this is Let's Talk About Brand. I'm here every single Friday at 12 noon Eastern talking about specific elements of branding with guest experts. And hopefully this is the second such conversation you've had with me live this week, because every Tuesday, same bat time, slightly different bat channel, I am on Twitter doing a Twitter chat called #ChatAboutBrand. And every single week, the Tuesday Twitter chat is on the same topic as my Friday guest expert interview. So this week, our topic was branding your home studio. My home studio, you can see I've got the bright red behind me. That's part of my branding. I've got my overlay. I consider that, even though it's not my studio, part of the branding. And of course, even myself. I mean, if I am sitting here in this seat in my studio, I've got my ring light on. I've got all my lighting plugged into a central strip. I've got the good camera usually, assuming it's working. And I've got my red lipstick on. It's all part of my home studio setup, and we would love to hear about your home studio setup. If you have one, please pop that in the comments. And we are going to talk to a home studio expert today about how to make sure that your home studio reflects your personal brand, or your brand if you're doing it for an employer, which I myself will be doing soon. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit as well. So Junaid Ahmed is the home studio expert. He is going to talk to us about everything we need to know to make sure that it is reflecting us and our brands as well as possible, because as we know, one of the best reasons to live stream or to do video in general is, of course, because it can help further our branding. Without any further ado, I'm going to bring Junaid on. Let's see. Here we go. Yay! Oop. And sometimes my home studio misbehaves. Okay. Boop. There we go. You see,
Hey.
live video. It's live, folks.
All right. So awesome to be here, Christine. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. So tell us just a little bit about how you became the home studio setup expert and what you do for people, how you help them with that.
Well, what's fun is that this is something that came as a natural evolution of who I am, what I'm about. Um, as all of us were stuck at home, I've been behind cameras for no, to just go back just a teeny bit. I've been behind cameras for about 30 years, and for the past decade, I've been creating content. I've been creating TV shows, and I've been creating being behind the camera, documentaries, shooting films, setting up the stage. But then in 2020, we are all stuck at home, and I was like, hey, I need a way to create content and from home. What do I do? So I started solving my own problem. I incrementally brought in all the stuff that I had learned over the years to set up my own space. I created, and luckily I had the gear from the past decade that I'm still using in my space. So I started putting things together using the camera, using the lights, getting good audio, making sure you have ways to absorb audio in your studio, and just making it really clean. And as I went down this path, down this journey, people started asking me, like, whoa, what are you doing with your camera? And as I'm on Zoom calls with people, and they just start picking, and they just start looking at what I was doing. And they're like, okay, you got to teach us what you're doing. And I was like, really? People want to learn this from me? Like, yes, you have an immediate transformation, that you've done over the past 2 years. So yes, we want to learn. So for the past year, I've been teaching people how to set up their home studio. I've been consulting people. I've been just telling them, hey, proper lighting, proper audio is what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. It was easier for some people who weren't like us on social media to ignore before, because before not everyone had to be on video all the time. And now, of course, in this era of Zoom calls, We all have to be, even on broadcast television. They've got people and they're clearly just with their laptop camera sitting in front of a
Mhm.
window with like their messy room behind them. It's like you're on, the news, people.
Yes.
So as you said, there was a big transformation that people noticed over like a couple years in your videos. So what did you start with? What was your initial setup when you first started doing video?
Oh my God. I need to share this, but where basically I was using a webcam on my computer, and then you would have to uh, and this is only because I was doing podcasting, and I wasn't using Zoom before podcasting. When I started my podcast in 2018, first of all, I was just talking to myself, and then I got curious, and I was like, "Hey, I want to talk to other weird people like myself." And guess what? There's a ton of us out there, podcasters. Started inviting them to be guests on the podcast. Started talking to them, and so the first image that I was able to share and show was all around what I was doing, or what I uh, recorded as a podcast. But it was not meant for video at all. So I was like, this is totally fine. Um, it works for me because all I'm doing is I'm creating content for myself. So if you want to take a look at that, I'll show you what that looks like. This is what video looked like back when I first started.
That's
And then
a
so over
big change.
time,
Wow.
I know,
Talk
right?
about a glow up. So
So
wait, what was this setup? Was this literally, did you have one light? It looks like there's one light. Or is that the glow from your computer screen?
so there's no light in this room. I just have overhead lights on the ceiling. You see these bright windows
So that's
behind
just
me,
from your screen
and
because I'm seeing a little bit of
this is
colder light on your face. Is that just your screen?
yes, that's the color light from my screen.
Hmm.
But overall, it was just a simple setup. I was just focused on creating the podcast. I was focused on creating the image and whatnot. Didn't matter to me. But
Hmm.
then as 2020 hit in, I was like, all right, I'm watching Pat Flynn. I'm watching all the people doing live streams daily. And Pat Flynn shared this URL, and he said, hey, he wrote a blog post that said, hey, this is what I'm doing in my studio. This is what I have going on. So I was like, oh, okay, I have all of this equipment that you're talking about. So I started adding the equipment. I started setting up my background. I started adding personality to it. I started adding lights to it.
So that was a big level
And
up that you showed just now, a second
that's,
ago. Can you go back to?
yes,
So one before that. Yeah, just from there to the next one. So, I mean, this
yeah,
looks pretty good already, honestly. Like
yes,
your image quality is there. So, this was probably more of an upgrade of the camera than anything else. And then you got fancy with the lighting. Is that correct?
that's right. So I just added more lighting here, and also the placement of where your face should be in
Mm-hmm.
the entire image, so that you can have on the bottom the name tag and everything. So based on prop photography, there's nothing happening above her head that we need to have space up there. So you want to be up top in your image,
Mm-hmm.
in your framing, and then you can have all the subtitles. And every time I watch TV, a sports show, whatever, I'll notice these things. I'm like, okay, how is their framing set up? So I'm looking at all these things. Oh, they have some harsh shadow. They could soften it. So I'm always like picking stuff down. But yeah, that's what I just started applying and started moving forward. And so this is what you see now, right? And
So,
then
can
so
we
here, the transformation.
So
Yeah,
can we
go for it.
talk about this setup? I actually want to focus on those final three. I think those
Hmm.
final three were a really interesting transition. So this was clearly massive step up from the previous.
Hmm.
So what was your lighting setup at this point and what kind of camera? Was it the same camera as you still use or was it different?
Yes, it's the exact same camera. In fact, even this camera is the same one.
Oh wow.
It's the positioning of the camera. Right?
And
So
did
the
you mess with the
camera is sitting
settings too?
higher, it's pointing down, and then I have overhead lights on. I didn't have dedicated lighting
Yeah.
set up here.
Wow.
And then on this image, you could see there's overhead lights on, and I was just taking a photo. So
Mhm.
that's why everything else is pretty well lit. But then the other thing that I also did is I replaced my overhead lights from soft white to daylight white, so that people,
Ah.
yeah, it represents your face. It show it translates your true skin color
Mm-hmm.
on camera even better.
And I see a bit of
And
red. Were you starting to use the red neon a little bit back then?
yes, so if you notice back here, I have LED lights
Mm-hmm.
around my bookshelf here, and that's what's shining on the wall and on this poster back here.
And what was your sound setup at that point?
So at this point, I was still using the Blue Yeti. So I had a Blue Yeti that I was using for at least a good 3 years, and then
I'm on a Yeti now. It misbehaved the
yes, you
past
are.
2 weeks, but it's back. I love my Yeti, but yeah. So you say still using. So I assume that that's a hint that there's an upgrade coming up at some point.
Right, right,
So
exactly. So
so at this
mhm.
point, Blue Yeti, you had overhead lights that were set to kind of a more natural daylight. Did you have a light in front of you or to the side or something as well?
I did have one light on the side of me that was a box photography light that I had lying around.
Nice. Okay, so let's see the upgrade. And the interesting thing about this is I've noticed that you and a whole bunch of YouTubers now, it's big with like the room being dark, except for colored light and then light
Hmm.
on your face. So can we talk about it?
Yes,
I mean, it's in this one and the next one.
correct.
So can we talk about how you do that, where your lights are, what kind they are, all of that?
Absolutely. So in this lighting setup, I've got two lights in front of me, one directly in front of me, and one off to the side, and I can do a demo of that. And then another light that's behind me that's highlighting my hair light. So
Oh.
hairline is as well as my shoulder.
So
So
is
what
it
that
is it
does,
is it lower? Is it basically behind your back?
it's behind. It's actually mounted on the ceiling behind
Oh,
me.
wow.
So it's lighting the top of my head and my shoulders, and I can do a demo of it quickly after this.
Hmm.
And then the reason I have the room darkened is that so we only have the
You.
lights that make the talent stand out. And who's the talent? The guy on the camera, right?
Yep.
So let me go back to my regular look and click on publish. Let's go to live mode. All right. So what I'm going to demo right now is how my different lighting setup is. So when I am normally in my office, I usually have the overhead lights, and this is what you see. Just have lights
Oh,
up
and I see the
above.
sound padding on the side there, which we'll talk about in a moment.
Yep, yep. So we can talk about the sound padding. Um, so let me go ahead and turn the key light on. As you notice,
Mm,
initially, if I turn that light on, you see a little bit of uh, shadow under my eyes, but since I have my overhead light a little further away, it's not as bad.
hmm.
But again, adding that key light just lights up my entire face properly.
Now, where is that
And
positioned?
so it's positioned 90 degrees in front of me and pointing down at 45 degrees down at me. So
And what
it's
kind of
up
is that?
on the
That
ceiling.
soft light box that you talked about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's a soft light box. It's controllable and
Hmm.
color changeable. It's not remote controllable. So I can only turn it on and off
Hmm.
remotely. But that's all we need.
That's
Once you have
something.
the lighting set up,
Yeah.
that's where you go with. So if I turn off the office lights, you'll see, okay, now this is so the reason you want to start with a dark room, so you can start with a blank canvas and then
Hmm.
you add the lights where you want to highlight it. So
Nice.
this is the main light, and then here's the hair light. So you'll notice the light turn on
Ooh,
and it adds that dimension.
it really
So you can see
does.
my shoulders lit up. And if now that I've mentioned this, every time you watch a TV show or a movie, you'll notice that every single person you can see their hair properly
Hmm.
because every scene they light their hair. All right, and then I've got another softbox to fill in the rest of the room, so you can see a little more of the background, a little more of me, and a lot less shadows.
And now
Again,
where is that? Is that kind of like 45 degrees to your right and up a bit?
yes,
Is it
yes.
as high up as your key light or lower?
it is as high up as the key light, but it is a much larger light.
Yeah.
I couldn't fit it in front of me because I'm right against the wall.
Hmm.
But further away, it's at 30% lit. It's a really bright light, and the reason you want to get a big light and a softer light is so you have softer shadows. You want
Yeah.
to mimic um, overcast when you're outside and it's
Hmm.
overcast. It's the best lighting ever.
Oh yeah. I'm a
So
mom
now,
in my 40s. I know. It's all about the lighting.
right? So here's my shelf lights. This is what I had initially, and then I added some lighting inside the shelves so I can light up whatever's in there. And then I added just one floodlight.
And that's just one. Wow.
Just one floodlight. Now, these floodlights are really funny because these are designed for your home
Yeah.
to light up your house from the
Mhm.
outside. So it's a small light, $15, $20, but it works really great. And it's at, one setting and just lights up that entire background.
Now, is it, if I were looking at the bulb itself, is it blue or purple or black light?
So this is blue light,
Mm-hmm.
but because it's mixed in with
With the
with a
red.
little bit of the red, it gives that purple hue.
Mm-hmm. And now, this is all fantastic information. I think everyone's scribbling down notes and drawing little diagrams of their studios. I know I'm certainly looking at it because I'm in a very small room, but I'm like, oh, I got to move stuff around. And we were just talking
Hmm.
before we went live. I
Yeah,
got some additional lighting that I just
nice.
I haven't pulled a moment together since getting back from
Hmm.
social media marketing world where we were hanging out to
That's
pull
right.
it together. But I mean, it can make such a big difference. I especially want to get a light on my backdrop here, which actually brings me to a question that I have for you.
Hmm.
I've heard that to get a green screen to work properly, lighting is
Hmm.
really the key. And this is definitely a selfish question here because
Hmm.
starting in May,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm always going to have this show, and this show is always going to be this, but I'm going to be starting a news program every week for Social Media Pulse,
Hmm.
starting in May. And that is not
Nice.
Christine Gritman Ink branding. That is not the red curtain. And I actually do plan, I have a green screen that I keep not,
Hanging
well,
behind us.
I'll show it later. I have a green screen I keep not using. And part of that
Hmm.
is because I get that weird like fuzz around it, but I've heard that that
Yeah.
is all about lighting. So, how do you recommend lighting a green screen properly?
So I'm not an expert on green screen because I haven't used them myself. But from what I've heard, you want to light the green screen evenly so that when you tell the camera that to take out that green color, it's able to take out that one hex code or that color out of the entire shot. So even if you have fuzzy hair and you have green screen showing through that fuzzy hair, it knows to take out that camera. And then again, out of the shot. So again, combining all of that stuff makes it much easier. Plus, if you're further away from the green screen, that also helps.
I've heard that. That's going to be tricky because this room is like 10 feet, but I'll make it happen.
That's you have a really large room. I have this is a 12-foot by 12-foot room as well.
Hmm.
So I'm sitting against one wall, and then like that's 10 feet away.
You
That
create a lot of
bookshelf.
dimension with it.
Hmm.
Speaking of which, I'd like to talk to you about, as we saw before, a few versions of your studio ago, we could see when it was all kind of more evenly lit, all the stuff behind you. Now you can
Yeah.
still kind of pick out some stuff. When we saw you, and we'll go back to the just you screen in a moment, you can see that there's like a Lego Millennium Falcon or something. Like there's something big there. I'd love to talk to you about those choices and how and what you've seen other people do and how they just add a little bit of personality
Hmm.
behind them and sometimes in front of them to make their studio theirs.
That's right. And when you have that personality showing through your video, people in your target audience, people that are watching your videos, will connect immediately. Like if somebody sees Lego box in my background, actually got the new Back to the Future DeLorean back here. Uh, as people see this stuff, they're like, okay, this guy loves Back to the Future. This guy loves Lego. So I've got two sets over here. and they're like, okay, I know what to talk to this guy about. And since my show, my podcast is called Hacks and Hobbies, well, I've got a ton of hobbies. I've got Darth Vader up here. I've got some stormtroopers hanging out on the bookshelf over here. It's blurred out, but then they could still make out a little bit. Okay, there's something about this that's creating personality. And the reason we want to show our personality in the show is because we want to connect people with people skills. I mean, with um, somebody mentioned it's really people, it's relationship, building. Uh, I can't remember what the exact thing was, but yeah, it's all around creating that connection, and we're all about creating connection through our personality. The more we have of it, the more we showcase it, the more easy it becomes to share our message and share what we're about.
Absolutely. Speaking of sharing our message, I forgot to get back to the microphone conversation before. Can we talk a bit about that, about your own journey through different microphone setups, and also, basically how best to leverage that?
Absolutely. So earlier you saw that I had some foam padding behind me, and that's so I can absorb excess sound traveling, walking around in my office. So it helps absorb the sound. It's not soundproofing, it's actually sound absorption, because anytime there's flat wall, flat surfaces, sound bounces around and comes back into your microphone. That's why we have the echo, the room echo showing up in all sorts of places. And we don't like that. So what you want to do is you want to cover those surfaces with curtains, with different photos, pictures. For example, I've got some posters on my wall. I've got some post-it notes, so they help get the sound, absorb or deflect it, so not coming back. So I was initially using the Yeti microphone, and it was great. It did really good for my podcasting. But then I started hearing, anytime there was somebody in the basement, my kids playing. I mean, I've got 3 kids and they have their friends over, they're playing with Lego bricks. There's a lot of sound going on. I would hear that sound back into the microphone and go back into the audio. And I was like, okay, this is not working out. Maybe I need to level up and upgrade my microphone. So the next version that I got, I was like, I purchased a audio box, a nice XLR microphone. I'm like, okay, this is gonna do the job. But I wasn't feeling it was too much on my desk. Like, and I'm like, okay, this is not gonna work for me. I need to find yet another microphone. I ended up with the Shure MV7. The Shure MV7 is a USB microphone, but it also has an XLR input. So if you have a control, an audio controller or audio, what do you call it, interface, you can still use it. But I like the USB aspect of it because it's so simple, reduces the friction, reduces the number of equipment I have to go through, and it just helps me sound really good.
Awesome. All right, so we had a question from Let's Talk about, from Chat About Brand from our chat. I'm going to pull that up. That was from Maiko, who's awesome about asking the questions, which I love. And she wants to know, what are the tricks we can use for a small space to create more depth in the background?
That's a really excellent question. And to create more depth in the background with a really small space, again, it all comes down to how much small of a space that is, because it all
they're
comes
small
down
and
to
they're
physics.
small. Like, I know people
Right.
who are broadcasting from their walk-in closets right now.
So it all comes down to physics, right? It's all about physics and creating that depth and dimension. So what you can do is you get a really sharp lens so that your ears are blurred out between your nose, right? So and that's the functionality of the lens. The the bigger that opening is of that lens, the smaller the focal distance would be. So what the lens is doing then is it's focusing on your eye, and outside of the focus is my hand. Like you can see my hand, it is out of focus already,
Hmm.
right? So when you have a lens like that for your small room setup, you're going to create that depth automatically.
Love that. Well, thank you so much for all of this incredible information. If there was like one thing, if someone's like, I'm just gonna level up one thing in my home
Hmm.
studio, just gonna buy one thing on Amazon, I'm just gonna move one thing somewhere else. What is the one thing that you think makes the biggest difference in leveling up a home studio?
So that's a beautiful and amazing question. And the one thing that you can spend to make your live stream, your video better, is a good microphone.
Ah,
Like, wait, what?
I thought you were gonna
Yes.
say lighting.
Well, lighting is free, right? If you sit in front of a window, you
Yep,
got free lighting. You just add a curtain, you got good lighting.
this is true.
And microphone is something that is should be anybody's first investment because it captures the audio and brings it to the audience so they can hear you better. And if they hear you better and if you sound better, guess what? They already like you 19% better than if you weren't using a good microphone. And you also sound smart. They actually did a research. They took the same recording and they played it back through different quality of audio and surveyed the people. And the people were like, oh my God, this other guy is so much more smarter. And they liked him more and they paid attention more.
Wow. That is powerful information. And of course it helps if you're stripping the audio for a podcast later.
Hmm.
It's good to have a nice podcast quality mic. But that is interesting. That was not what I was expecting your answer to be. I love it. Awesome. Well, Junaid, tell everyone where they can find you and why they should.
Well, I love technology. I love to help people. I love to help you look better on camera because this is not going away. There's more and more people coming online, and this is the new way that people are going to learn about you, learn about your message. So, if you want to learn more about me, you can go over to homestudiomastery.com if you want to help with the home studio. But on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, everywhere, I am at Super Junaid. That's Junaid like lemonade.
Perfect. Well, you have been a huge aid to us today in leveling up our home studio game. So thank you so much. And thanks again for
Well,
hanging out with me at Social Media Marketing World. It was great to see you.
absolutely. Good to see you as well.
Now, as I said, I do this show every single Friday at noon. However, next week's show, I am still having a show next week, but it actually won't be live. I'm pre-recording next week's show with Madeline Sklar, Twitter expert extraordinaire. We're going to be talking about branding with Twitter Spaces. But we are recording it after my chat happens. So definitely still show up on Tuesday at noon Eastern on Twitter. I'm C. Gritman on Twitter. And make sure to join Chat About Brand so that you have an opportunity to control what I ask Madeline Sklar during next week's show about Twitter Spaces. Thanks so much for being here. Let us know if you've joined us live or on the replay and what platform you're joining us on. And I hope to see you next week. Bye.